Information, news, and entertainment on demand.
WSRadio.com. Welcome, neighbors, to Vecinos with your host, Maria Garcia.
Welcome to Vecinos this morning. I hope you enjoy our show. My guest today is Christian Ramirez. Christian is director of Alliance, but he was also a little boy growing up in San Diego, and I want to start with that part. I want to start with Christian and the road to who you are today. Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood, please?
Sure, Maria. I was actually born in Tijuana, and in the Otay Mesa region of Tijuana. And as a young boy, I was diagnosed with cancer. It was a very aggressive form of cancer, and my parents had two options: either to go to Mexico City and find treatment there, or come across the border and find treatment at UCSD Medical Center. They opted for the shortest distance, and they crossed the border when I was 8 years old. My dad had legal permanent residency of the United States, and we came here seeking medical a cure for cancer. And fortunately, I survived cancer 3 times, and I was able to continue to be alive. And we settled in the southern part of the city of San Diego, where I grew up, where I went to high school, and where my parents still live today.
Tell us a little bit about your high school experience. I've heard the stories, but I think people can't imagine going to a high school where the Border Patrol is part of your life every day. Talk a little bit about that, please.
Sure, Maria. You know, I went to Southwest High School, which is the southwesternmost high school in the continental United States, less than a mile away from the border wall. Growing up there, our closest beach was the one located at the Borderfield State Park. That's where we will go in the summertime and take our bikes or walk down to that beach. And oftentimes we were stopped by Border Patrol agents and questioned about our legal status. But perhaps the most vivid moments I have of growing up in Nestor, which is a small community nestled between San Isidro and Imperial Beach, right up against the border wall, is when we used to play soccer at Southwest High's field. And one of the things that I remember very vividly was having Border Patrol agents chase undocumented migrants running through the field as we're playing soccer. And, of course, we had to pause for the game and watch the spectacle in front of us. And sometimes we ran with the immigrants, you know, trying to run from the Border Patrol. And that was childhood games, you know. And sometimes some of my friends were caught, and Border Patrol would yell at us. And the agents say, "Don't do that. You're going to get hurt. You know, you're disrupting our operations." And it was childhood games. You know, we had a good laugh. But then things became more serious. And I remember being a junior in high school, walking to class one morning and being questioned by Border Patrol. I wasn't running from them. I was just simply walking, perhaps walking a little bit fast because I was maybe late for class. But I was handcuffed and thrown in the back of this pickup truck. I had my backpack on me and had my high school ID. That's all I had with me, and that wasn't enough to prove my legal status. And as I began to talk to more folks in the neighborhood, I realized very quickly that this was everyday life for all of us. And we rarely talked about it. You know, it was so common that it wasn't
no big deal.
It was no big deal. You know, but then when the parents and teachers and classmates were being detained, I knew that things were getting very, very serious.
You know, it's funny because you bring that up. My mother was born here, was born in Arizona, but she always carried her birth certificate. And she always would tell me that I should have a copy. And I could never understand why I should carry a copy of the birth certificate. I went to Texas and we made a photocopy of my birth certificate because I went on a Greyhound bus to visit my grandmother. And I had that copy. I wasn't asked for it, but my mother was so adamant. Obviously, she had experienced something in her youth that told her that you had to have ID.
And that was my experience. You know, everywhere I went, in San Isidro or in Nestor, Imperial Beach, we were always questioned about our status in the United States, whether it be driving in my parents' vehicle or riding on the bus or in the trolley. This was everyday life. And And perhaps the moment I think in which I realized that this was unfair was an incident in which a family of undocumented migrants were seeking help. They were, obviously tired, exhausted from crossing and walking across the border all night, and they wanted help. They knocked on my parents' backyard shed, and they wanted food, they wanted water, they wanted assistance. My parents helped them. They provided them with some warm meal, and they were able to use the telephone in our home to call their relatives. That was enough for the Border Patrol to come in one day and demand that they be let in. They didn't have a warrant. They said that we were harboring undocumented immigrants, that was a crime. All my parents were doing was giving them something to eat, a place to rest, so they could continue on the journey. And all of my neighbors used to do that because we're talking about hundreds of people, literally hundreds of people crossing through our backyards every single day, every single night. And Border Patrol agents chasing behind them and the helicopters flying overhead. This was everyday life. And, most of the time, we just sort of slept through the night because it was so common. But from time to time, it was families that were seeking help. And to me, the fact that my parents were criminalized for providing assistance, something that's so grounded in
humanity.
It's our humanity. These are our values, To me, that was sort of the last drop. I said, this is wrong. Something has to change. And those were the years of Prop 187 and Governor Pete Wilson. I was a very young man, and I knew very quickly that we had an obligation as young men and women back then, those in their mid-90s, to stand up for our communities.
How did you get to college? What made you go there?
It was a tough journey. Southwest High was a tough place to graduate from, but I have had the privilege of having very strong mentors in my life, and I was one of the few lucky ones that was able to go to college. I was the first kid in my family to go to college, and it was an AP Spanish literature teacher at Southwest High School who saw something in me and that believed in me and helped guide me through the steps to go to San Diego State University, where I became a student activist there and had the privilege of having even more mentors at San Diego State who helped me through my college years. It was tough. It was politically, it was a tough time to be a young man in college. I was the first one to go to college, and that was not an easy thing for me. But I was able to have the right people at the right time in my life, folks who still today, so many years later, I consider them mentors and are still guiding me in this new stage of my life.
What was your first reaction when you got to San Diego State and you saw the campus and the students? Can you remember that?
I can. It was a very hot summer day. I decided to live on campus. And excited, I wanted to enjoy the whole experience, and I felt completely out of place, Maria. It was the sheer number of folks walking through that campus, trying to find the buildings, trying to figure out, how to pay for this stuff. It was where to eat. That was the biggest thing. For a couple of days, I couldn't find a place to eat. I had a food plan that allowed me to go to use a cafeteria, but I didn't know where the cafeteria was or how to use the food plan. And I befriended a whole lot of folks, but simple things like that, and I found a safe haven at the Malcolm A. Love Library, and that's where I used to go and study. And I was able to work there. I was hired as a student employee, and was able to really, find myself at San Diego State as a place that belonged to me. It took me a while, but it was very overwhelming, seeing so many people, having to find buildings, having to find classrooms. And for a full 2 weeks, I think I was just walking aimlessly around campus trying to figure out where to go, what to do with my life. I was like, this isn't for me, but I was able to figure it out. And that's, that's been my life, just trying to overcome these challenges. So San Diego State was one of perhaps a moment that really marked me, and as a young man, and a chapter in my life that I'm very, very proud of.
How did your parents react to you leaving home to live on campus?
I was 17. I graduated a bit early from high school because I was born in November. I think they were scared and proud at the same time. Having taken their kid to college, dropping him off, it was sort of stuff that movies are made of, and something that I don't think they ever imagined. And I think it was in that very moment that I realized the big sacrifice my parents made. My dad was an accountant for the Mexican government in Mexico when we had to move to the U.S. to seek a cure for my cancer, and I realized that they put their careers on hold. My dad ended up being a car washer in San Diego, from being a federal auditor in Mexico to a car washer in San Diego, a very dignified job by all means, but nonetheless, he worked very hard. He was the first child in his family in Mexico to go to school. And I know how much my grandparents worked so that he could have an education, have a good job and a good career. And I think that when I was dropped off in college, I realized that was a sacrifice.
We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about his youth and talk about something that affected the San Diego community in many different ways. Thank you for listening.
A podcast or radio show on WS Radio is a great way to create content marketing. Turn prospects into customers into raving fans. Contact Wade at WSRadio.com or call 866-WS-RADIO.
The richness of your life is reflected in the shimmering elegance found at Diolun Design. One-of-a-kind jewelry and pieces from Cynthia Dillon in silver and gold help to express your unique personality. The flowing designs of her creations will empower the way you move throughout your day. Join us online at DIOLUNdesigns.com.
Hi, this is Rob Barnett, CEO and founder of VinVillage.com and the Wine and Dine Show on Vin Village Radio. Do you have a wine, event, product, or service to promote? Then contact VinVillage.com to reach thousands of wine lovers across the country. VinVillage connects like-minded wine enthusiasts with unique and exclusive wines, events, products, and services. To learn more, contact us on VinVillage.com. VinVillage is where wine lovers connect.
One person has the power to change the world, impact millions of lives, and leave a legacy for lifetimes to come. That person is you. In the New York Times bestseller, What is Your What?, Steve Olsher, award-winning author and founder of the Reinvention Workshop, reveals his proven process that has helped thousands of men and women discover, share, and monetize the one thing they were born to do. Grab your free copy now at www.whatisyourwhat.com/free. That's www.whatisyourwhat.com/free.
Take a break from politics. Tune in and learn something. WS Radio shows are worth your time and are filled with tips and advice. Add us to your lunch routine and we'll give you a meal for your mind.
Small businesses are the lifeblood of America's economy. Every Thursday, SBA Radio interviews industry professionals and is dedicated to provide small businesses with timely insights and innovations. Visit www.sbaradio.us for details.
Has your business been appified? Are you tired of doing marketing that doesn't deliver results? Mobile apps build loyalty and quality retention. Your app from UPG Mobile puts your business on their mind and at their fingertips. UPG Mobile will give you a custom app highlighting how you are unique, targeting your message, and improving your open rates. Appify your business and amplify your presence with your customers. at upgmobilemarketinggroup.com.
Talk to me.
Information, news, and entertainment on demand.
WSRadio.com.
Welcome, neighbors, to Vecinos with your host, Maria Garcia.
Welcome back to Vecinos. My guest today is Christian Ramirez, and he's been telling us a little bit about his childhood, his life. But I'd like to know a little bit more about growing up in that San Isidro, Nestor area, and also about your family and going to college. Can you share a little bit more?
You know, I was the first one to go to college. I mentioned to you, Maria, and then my sister, Mariana, followed in my footsteps, and she took off. You know, she has a master's degree now in education. She's on her way to get a PhD also in that field. She was an educator here in San Diego for a while. She, in fact, worked at Memorial as a teacher in Logan Heights. And during the economic crisis, she couldn't find a job as a teacher in San Diego, so she had to move to LA. And that was a difficult moment for my family. And I realized there that, there are double standards, that while my parents were proud to drop me off at San Diego State when I was 17 years old, and certainly, I'm guessing, a bit concerned, but very proud. My sister, although she was already a professional and had graduated with honors from San Diego State University, she wanted to further her career, and she couldn't do it in San Diego, so she had to move to LA, and that was devastating, for my family. My parents were completely shocked and outraged that she decided to leave San Diego. We're obviously now very, very proud of her, and I could see the smiles in my mom and dad when they went to UCLA just a few months ago and saw her walk, to get her master's degree, and they were so proud. But I think that those are the challenges that we're facing in our community. Even though I grew up in what I would call a very progressive family, there were still double standards, and it was okay for the boy to go to college, but not so much for their daughter to move to LA to further her career.
And you've mentioned before in our conversations that one of the things that really did affect you or brought to light was the McDonald's shooting. And for those of you, was that 84?
It was 85.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember I was vice principal at Sherman, and I heard it on the TV news, and it left me floored. It left me shocked. I didn't know what to do. Tell me what happened with you.
Well, Maria, that was the only McDonald's in the South Bay, and we were still living in Tijuana at the time. And one of the things that we did, and Tijuanans did, was go to San Isidro and go to that McDonald's, because it was very modern.
McDonald's.
It was McDonald's modern. It had rides. It had McDonald's, and we had no McDonald's in Mexico at the time. So a lot of folks don't know this, but half the folks who perished in that horrific massacre were folks from Tijuana. In fact, one of the young women who died there was a close friend of our family, and that really marked me. I think it marked a lot of folks in Tijuana and San Diego, and it was a binational tragedy. And although I was a very small kid, I remember that leaving an impression in me, of how fragile our lives were. And that was before I got sick. A few months after that, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I, in some ways, it was seeing those young boys' bodies and bloodied folks exiting the McDonald's, and the pictures, and it was on TV, it was on the radio. Folks talked about that a whole lot. I think in many ways that gave me the strength to fight cancer as a young kid. And one of the things that I used to do a whole lot is eat at McDonald's, and I don't eat there anymore. But it was one of those moments that I realized that our lives were so fragile, and that incident really marked me as a child. It marked a whole lot of folks in San Isidro I know, and our family, because we lost a good friend of ours there.
Okay, after you leave San Diego State, or do you want to talk a little bit about your experiences at San Diego State? What did you get into at San Diego State?
Well, I was a machista at San Diego State, and this was it was 1994. I was a freshman at San Diego State, and that was an election year. Pete Wilson was running for re-election. Prop 187 was on the ballot, and it was, it was a moment of the Zapatista uprising in Mexico. NAFTA had been signed. Operation Gatekeeper was launched, which deployed a whole lot of Border Patrol agents in our communities. It was a very politically charged moment to be in college, and I took all my strength and all my energy to be politically conscious and politically active. That distracted me a bit from my studies, I'm not going to lie, but I think in many ways it allowed me to that allowed me to find my calling, and a few, I think the second semester at San Diego State is where I got an internship at the American Friends Service Committee office, which was then led by Roberto Martinez, and had the honor and privilege of having an internship there. And that's, I think, where I really found my calling, of what was my purpose. I wanted to be a doctor, but I went into school thinking that I wanted to be a doctor based on, my experiences as a child being sick. Soon I found out that organic chemistry was not for me, and I found a different path. And I was very fortunate that I found just the right people in my life to guide me in my direction. More importantly, to find the meaning of my life and the calling that I have to serve others.
For those of you who are not familiar with Roberto Martinez, he is deceased, but he had a tremendous effect on the San Diego community, probably a nationwide community, but I think of him as part of our community. He was one of the most peaceful, quiet gentlemen I've ever met, but he always got things done. He'd prod and stick with things and work through, but he was a doer, not much a talker, but a doer. Do you agree?
Without a doubt, he took on folks with a whole lot of power. He challenged Border Patrol abuse. He challenged police brutality, as you well mentioned, Maria, very peacefully, but always speaking truth to power, not seeking the attention, not seeking headlines, but always trying to ensure that that justice was served. He had no reason to do it. He was a U.S. citizen, 5th, 6th generation Chicano, I believe. But he sympathized with the struggle of immigrants, and it was that empathy, that willingness to drop everything and listen to folks and then expose the abuse and speak truth in a time in which there was no social media, no Facebook, and he was able to do it. And I think not only nationally but internationally, he was a pioneer around the issue of human rights here in the southwest border, and I think he is one of the most important icons of the Chicano community in the late 20th century, without a doubt. And I think he rightfully deserves a place in history, and we should not forget the great contributions that Roberto has made to the United States and to our community.
And I will be writing about Roberto. I've been talking to Yolanda about it.
Wonderful.
For my next book, because I just feel that he's never gotten the shining star moment.
He hasn't, and he deserves it.
Yeah. Okay, so you leave college. What do you do?
I leave college, and I get called by Roberto Martinez, and he says, there's a position for you. It's a short-term position. You're assigned to work around police brutality issues. This was the early 2000s, and we had a whole lot of incidents with police brutality in San Diego and National City. My focus was in National City, and we had several incidents there of police brutality. And he says it's a short-term assignment, 6 to 9 months, but you have to document some cases. 6 to 9 months turned into almost 13 years of service at the American Friends Service Committee. After Roberto announced his retirement, he says to me, I want to talk to you, and I want you to replace me as the director of the San Diego office of the American Friends Service Committee. I was 22, 23, very young. Certainly had a whole lot of ideas and thought that I was going to change the world by myself.
Like all of us.
But, stepping into those shoes, they're so big, so hard to fill, and I was completely overwhelmed. with just the stories, the difficulty of raising money for a nonprofit, the inability to serve quickly, the community and provide them with a clear solution to their problems, knowing that seeking justice was so difficult. And the best thing that you could do is just tell their stories, because our government is so unjust. That was so difficult for me. And it really weighed on my shoulders that I had promised these folks that I was going to give them justice. And I failed and failed and failed. But once in a while, we were able to get justice. And it was those moments that folks said to me, thank you for standing with us, that I knew that I was doing the right thing. And I worked for the American Friends Service Committee for 13 years and served, beginning as an organizer, then as the director of the San Diego office. I moved up to be our national coordinator for the American Friends Service Committee, and then left AFSC as a policy advisor, a national policy advisor on immigration and border issues. And then I now work for Alliance San Diego, where I direct their human rights programs.
And after commercial, we'll be talking about your job or your employment with the Alliance. I know it's kind of a continuation of what you've done all your life, though.
It is. I've been extremely fortunate. I'm very lucky to be alive, and lucky that I'm able to get paid every single day to do the work that I love to do. And I'm so fortunate and so thankful for folks believing in me and believing in the work that I do, because really since college I've been doing this work.
We'll be back to continue our conversation and see what his jobs and his duty is with Alliance, and talk a little bit about his future. Thank you.
Tired of presentations with no impact, no inspiration, and no traction? Do dull speakers have you and your team disengaged and distracted by smartphones? Christopher McAuliffe brings energy, insights, and 2 decades of experience, delivered with punch, humor, and heart. Your team will leave energized, uplifted, and with a sense of purpose. Visit ChristopherMcAuliffe.com to bring some heat to your next speaking engagement. McAuliffe. ChristopherMcAuliffe.com.
Take a break from politics. Tune in and learn something. WS Radio shows are worth your time and are filled with tips and advice. Add us to your lunch routine, and we'll give you a meal for your mind.
I raised $8,000 to build schools for South African children. After realizing how many people go hungry in San Diego, I now volunteer at a food pantry.
I'm spending the next year doing volunteer projects across 3 countries and helping in ways they designate to be the most helpful.
The World Link program at the Joan B. Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice recognizes the potential of youth as agents of social change. Learn how you can help youth become a generation of leaders in action at peace.sandiego.edu.
Attention business owners. If you feel like your business owns you and want to grow your company and get your life back, then get the Scale Toolkit at scaleyourbusinesstoolkit.com. Created by Wall Street Journal bestselling author David Finkel and Priceline.com co-founder Jeff Hoffman, this free collection of 36 videos and PDF tools will help you build a business, not a job. Go to scaleyourbusinesstoolkit.com today and learn how to work less by getting your business to produce more.
Small businesses are the lifeblood of America's economy. Every Thursday, SBA Radio interviews industry professionals and is dedicated to provide small businesses with timely insights and innovations. Visit www.sbaradio.us for details.
If you heard that sound, you probably are eligible for insurance from Navy Mutual, insuring the men and women of the Navy, Marines, and Coast Guard. Here's what one policyholder, retired Navy Commander Thomas Dade, had to say.
Navy Mutual is the best insurance decision I ever made. I wish you had a savings plan available that earned the rates my Navy Mutual insurance has been earning.
Navy Mutual Aid Association, started by military members in 1879, serves active, reserve, and retired military today. Navy Mutual honors our military by providing them affordable life insurance with the features they need without fine print, sales fees, or military service restrictions. Value, integrity, trust, and stability are the cornerstones on which our commitment to you and your loved ones are built. Call Navy Mutual at 1-800-628-6011 or NavyMutual.org for your personal life insurance plan consultation. 1-800-628-6011 or NavyMutual.org. Navy Mutual, insuring those who serve.
Talk to me.
Information, news, and entertainment on demand.
WSRadio.com.
Welcome, neighbors, to Vecinos with your host, Maria Garcia.
Welcome back to Vecinos. My guest today is Christian Ramirez. We're going to talk about his current employment and his work with social justice before we go talk about his future. Christian?
Well, one of the things that I've been focusing on, Maria, in the last almost 6 years since I've been with Alliance San Diego is how do we build a strong social advocacy movement for border communities. It's really following the footsteps of Roberto, and one of the things that he was, he didn't have enough time to work on was to strengthen advocacy work along the border. So I've been very thankful in my current capacity to have formed the largest border rights advocacy group in the nation. We have 60 organizations that are part of the Southern Border Communities Coalition, which I direct. And this organization includes 60 groups from San Diego all the way to Brownsville, and we have a presence in all 4 southern border states here in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. We now have an office in Washington, D.C., where we have a permanent advocate in D.C. working with members of Congress and the administration to push for reforms around border enforcement. And one of the things that I am very proud of is that now border communities are at the forefront of advocating for ourselves. For so many years, we were considered marginal, sort of the forgotten piece of the United States. And now, politically, we have a presence. We meet regularly with high-level officials, both in Congress and in the administration, and working with this administration has been extremely difficult. Nonetheless, we still maintain a dialogue with Customs and Border Protection at the national level. We believe very strongly that if we're not at the table as folks who are impacted by the excessive enforcement that Border Patrol is known for, then we will not be able to better the quality of life for border residents. So that's been my job for almost 6 years. I've been leading mainly efforts to have more accountability and oversight for Customs and Border Protection, which is the largest law enforcement agency in the United States, an agency that's riddled with corruption and use of force incidents that unfortunately has claimed the lives of so many of our friends and neighbors here in the borderlands.
My question would be right now is, what, and this is putting you on the spot, what do you think are the 3 major issues in a border community? Or in our border community? Let's be more specific. In the San Diego border community.
The major issue that we're facing here is that there is still this misguided attempt of pushing forward policies that make no sense for the 21st century San Diego-Tijuana border region. While some folks may have believed that building walls and deploying agents made sense in the 80s and 90s, certainly doesn't make sense today. San Diego-Tijuana border region has the lowest border crossings, undocumented border crossings in the history of the region. And what we do have are tremendous traffic jams at the ports of entry. So if I want to visit my grandmother in Tijuana, I have to work into my schedule, waiting at least 2 hours to come back home, and sometimes even an hour to leave San Diego and to go into Tijuana. So we have outdated policies that seek to deploy more agents. In fact, we're building this, or this country is building, with our taxpayers are building, I should say, a $20 million border prototype here in the Otay Mesa border region. These are these heinous walls that the Trump administration has built up as possible examples of what the border wall may look like under his administration, while we don't have adequate port of entry facilities that create backlogs, and that's a major issue. A second issue is environmental issues. We still have raw sewage spilling across the border into San Diego, Nestor, Imperial Beach, where I grew up, and that's been going on for decades, and we still haven't figured out a way to address this very serious environmental disaster that's causing problems there. And finally, I would say that we have a very serious issue with Border Patrol. Folks may not know this, but if I want to take my kid to visit his grandparents in Imperial County, we have to go through a checkpoint. Just last week, I took my kid to Knott's Berry Farm in Orange County, and we had to go through a checkpoint. So it is this pervasive presence of Border Patrol in our communities, the checkpoints, the roundups, that I think really erode the quality of life for San Diegans. And certainly a lot of folks in San Diego don't realize this, but if you live south of the 80, you live in Chula Vista, National City, San Isidro, those communities, sometimes you see more Border Patrol agents than you actually see local law enforcement, and that is a problem.
I have friends that live in Jamul, and it's not unusual for them to see Border Patrol in their yards.
That's right. In fact, the Border Patrol is the largest law enforcement agency in San Diego County, with nearly 3,000 Border Patrol agents and customs agents in our community. It's the largest, and without having adequate accountability and oversight mechanisms, oftentimes these agents abuse their authority, enter into private property without warrants, detain folks without any reasonable cause, and that undermines our ability to be safe. Because if you can't trust the men and women in uniform, then you really can't feel safe because you don't know who to call. And one of the things that we've been trying to do is to make sure that if we can't pass policies, at least let's have an opportunity to sit down and dialogue. This is not always an easy thing to do, but this is a democracy, and public servants should be accountable to taxpayers. And we believe very strongly that Border Patrol, as powerful as they are not above the law, and they have an obligation to sit down and meet with community members. And that's what we've been doing for the past 6 years.
When you meet with them, what is their reaction? Tell me a little bit about that interaction.
It's not always an easy interaction, Maria. Sometimes we've met with them in the aftermath of just very violent incidents in which folks have either seriously been injured or killed, and there are serious topics of discussion. But, one of the things that I've learned, and this is in part the teachings of Roberto, is to not demonize your opposition, and to try to see, in folks in that green uniform, the fact that they're human beings, the fact that they have families and they have lives, and that they are folks who genuinely care, that it's the policies that need to be changed. And this is particularly true for Border Patrol, perhaps less so in San Diego because we're the largest urban area in the borderlands. But if you go to smaller communities like Douglas, Arizona, Las Cruces, New Mexico, where I've had also an opportunity to meet with Border Patrol leadership there, you realize that the only good-paying jobs in those communities are to be Border Patrol agents because, you don't need a college degree. It's a union job. You get a good pension, good benefits. So when you demonize Border Patrol, in some ways you're also demonizing somebody's cousin or somebody's husband or somebody's, aunt. And what I've learned to do is to not go after the agents themselves. Clearly, if an agent violates his or her authority, then we're going to go after them, and we're going to use all of our tools to ensure that we hold those folks accountable. But we go after the policy. And sometimes it's difficult, and these are not always easy conversations. But I think what I've learned is that in government, there are still genuinely good folks who want to make a difference. But it's the policies that have prevented them from allowing them to really further their careers in a way that is fulfilling and in a way that protects the communities that they love. And my hope is that we're able to change those policies, and we're able to get folks in Congress who understand that there's an urgent need for us to reform the way that Border Patrol is structured so that we allow good men and women to serve in that capacity and don't allow corrupt and violent folks to continue to abuse their authority.
What percent of the Border Patrol is Latino? Any idea?
I don't have the stats right in front of me, Maria, but what I would tell you is that it's the most diverse law enforcement agency in the United States. I would say that above 65% of the men and women who work for the Border Patrol are people of color. It's a very small fraction of women, and this I know because I was just looking at this last night. 5%, less than 5% of the force are women. Which is a serious problem, and it has to do with some of the abusive behavior, the culture of violence inside the agency. But it is a very diverse agency, and particularly in places like the Rio Grande Valley of Texas or southern Arizona or Las Colonias of New Mexico. These are really the only jobs available for folks. So Border Patrol knows that it could recruit from those communities directly.
Can you tell me what's the difference between a Border Patrol and a custom worker?
It's a good question. It's hard to define because Customs and Border Protection is one of the largest entities inside the Department of Homeland Security, with nearly 55,000 men and women in uniform. There's three components to Customs and Border Protection. Perhaps the one that we are most familiar with is the U.S. Border Patrol. These are the folks in green uniform. These folks are able to patrol within 100 miles of the border and 100 miles of any maritime border. So that means that the entire state of California is within their jurisdiction. In fact, 80% of the folks that live in the United States live within this jurisdiction of the U.S. Border Patrol, this 100-mile perimeter of any land or maritime border. So this is Border Patrol. Customs agents, also known as the Office of Field Operations, these are the folks in blue uniform, and if folks cross through to Tijuana, when they come back, they're going to be welcomed into the United States by Office of Field Operations. These are folks in blue uniform, mainly working at the land ports, at the seaports, and at the airports, at the international terminals. And then there's a smaller subdivision known as Air and Marine. This is a small component of Customs and Border Protection, and they mainly patrol in the coast and the air.
Hold that thought, and thank you. We'll come back for our last session in a few minutes and talk to Christian about his plans for the future.
On the internet, your business's reputation can be unjustly destroyed in an instant. Don't wait for that to happen. Building and marketing your 5-star reputation can increase your business by as much as 19%. Take control of your reputation and have the 5-star reputation you deserve with Reputation Marketing Solutions by DSI Development. Become the go-to company by visiting 5starrepmarketing.com. The number 5starrepmarketing.com.
Hi, this is Rob Barnett, CEO and founder of VinVillage.com and the Wine and Dine Show on Vin Village Radio. Do you have a wine, event, product, or service to promote? Then contact VinVillage.com to reach thousands of wine lovers across the country. VinVillage connects like-minded wine enthusiasts with unique and exclusive wines, events, products, and services. To learn more, contact us on VinVillage.com. VinVillage is where wine lovers connect.
You've heard me talking about Progressive Medical Center. They have helped me feel my best. And Dr. Gully, tell us a little bit about integrative medicine. Why is that such a big deal at Progressive Medical Center, and how can that make me feel better?
Integrative medicine is just good medicine. It's combining the best of traditional medicine, nutritional medicine, natural medicine, and really helping the patient get to the root cause so they can take control of their health and really make an impact to improve not only their energy, their vitality, and just their overall outlook on their health and their life.
I procrastinated for a long time before I finally made an appointment. So why should someone not delay and go ahead and get set up and come see you guys?
Any journey begins with that first step, and that first step means making a decision to recognize that there's something wrong with you. Whether you have fatigue, inappropriate weight gain, not sleeping well, not concentrating, all of these issues, you can get to the root cause.
So many of us here at The Fish have gotten help from Progressive Medical Center. So why don't you find out more from them today? Go to progressivemedicalcenter.com.
This is your life. Live it well.
You take your smartphone almost everywhere you go. Now WSRadio.com can be there too. Search WS Radio in the Play Store for your Android devices or iTunes for Apple, and download the WS Radio application. WSRadio.com, on your phone and in your ear everywhere you go. Download the WS Radio application. Do it now. It's very easy. WSRadio.com.
Attention business owners. Does it feel like your business owns you? See if you qualify for a free 90-minute business coaching session to help you build a business, not a job. During this free 90-minute strategic consultation, one of our senior coaches will help you map out the best way to grow your company and get your life back. To learn more, go to MauiMasterminds.com/scale now. That's MauiMasterminds.com/scale now.
Talk to me.
Information, news, and entertainment on demand.
WSRadio.com.
Welcome, neighbors, to the Cinos with your host, Maria Garcia.
You're listening to WS Radio, lead talk show on internet. I'm so happy you're still here with us, Christian, and I want to talk about what your future plans are. What do you want to do now?
Well, Maria, after the devastating November election and how our country was turned upside down by the triumph of Donald Trump as president, one of the things that I've always said is if you're in a place of leadership, you have to step up. And I've called on undocumented folks to stand up for their rights. I've called upon folks who have been victimized by law enforcement and by government to stand up for their rights, to speak out, to lead. And I was devastated by the results of the elections. I knew that this was going to be a very, very bad 4 years for working class folks, for communities of color, for border residents, for immigrants. But I didn't want to sit in a corner and just wait for this 4 years to pass us by. And I didn't want to continue to do what I was doing. This was a moment for me to get out of my comfort zone and to lead. And one of the things that I wanted to do is prove to our communities that our democracy still works, that we have an opportunity here to elect folks who are like-minded, who have values that you share. And I decided a few months after the election that I was going to run for city council of the District 8, where I grew up, where my family lives. 4 generations of my family live in that district. Because I feel very strongly that we need leadership in government that understands the plight of working families, leadership that stands up for those families, and that not only stands up for them, but actually works towards making sure that their quality of life improves. And I know that our democracy works because I've seen it in action, but I also know that there are pieces of our democracy that need to be changed. And when you allow the political elites to control government, things don't happen for our communities. And I want to make sure that I do everything that I can to take action to protect the quality of life of communities in District 8 in the city of San Diego.
Describe a little bit how you see our current city council, without naming any, just the whole council as a whole.
Well, I think that there's a whole lot of inaction. I think that there are folks who put political needs before the needs of the community. There are folks who are always trying to figure out what's their next political move. And in doing so, while I admire folks that want to make a career out of politics, I think it is a good profession if it's used for the well-being of others. That being said, I also believe that communities can't always be used as a stepping stone to further political careers. And one of the things that District 8 has faced is that it's always been used as a stepping stone to build political careers of those who have served in that capacity as council members of District 8. So I think political inaction from the city council has to do with partisan politics, has to do with folks putting their party and their political interests before the needs of their constituents, and that has led to inaction. We need a voice of moral authority in the city, in city hall, and I think that based on the 20 years that I have career that I have in advocating for communities, I can be that voice of reason, that voice that says that we have an obligation to respond to the needs of constituents. And I am disappointed that basic things that should not be happening in the city of San Diego, like folks dying of preventable diseases like hepatitis A, or having kids and our seniors living in the streets of San Diego, has to do with the inability of our city council and the current mayor to get things done because they put politics before policy.
If I'm a downtown businessman, why would I want to support you?
Well, because I think that we need to ensure that we have a voice in City Hall that is not going to be tied to political or economic interests. It's going to be tied to getting things done. And the best way to improve the quality of life of all San Diegans is to ensure that San Diegans are able to afford to live in San Diego. And if you have a family of 4 who can't afford to make ends meet anymore, they're either going to move out of our region or they're going to be homeless. And we are pushing more and more folks into homelessness. And it breaks my heart, Maria, where I live in Sherman Heights, to see kids as young as my boy, who's 3 years old, living in the streets of San Diego, in one of the wealthiest cities, in the wealthiest state, in the wealthiest country this world has ever seen. It's completely, unforgivable. We can't allow those kinds of things. It's shameful. And I think that if we're going to improve businesses, we first need to ensure that San Diegans are treated with dignity and respect, and to get the most vulnerable folks out of the streets and put them in a safe place so that they could have a chance to live with dignity and respect in their city. And that's my hope.
I have family members that are not homeless, but they're one step from homeless because of the cost of rents in San Diego. They're ridiculous. About 3 years ago, I was at a social function, and I mentioned children sleeping on the streets. And several people reacted with, "No, they're not." And I said, when the time changes and I walk downtown San Diego, I see parents putting their little children between them so they'll keep them a little bit warmer. But their kids, your son's age, or a little bit older. This is definitely a problem. What else do you see as a problem?
Basic things like good infrastructure. There are streets in Logan Heights that have never been paved. There are sidewalks that are busted up. Those are the kinds of things that aren't allowed in any other part of the city. And the fact is that many residents of Council District 8 don't even know they live in the city of San Diego because there hasn't been an attempt by the city of San Diego to reach out to them. So I was talking to folks in San Isidro, and a lot of folks down there tell me, I don't live in San Diego. I live in San Isidro. I said, no, you live in San Diego. You pay taxes. You pay property taxes. You pay taxes, and that money goes to the city of San Diego. Representation money, having an opportunity for folks to be able to look at City Hall as a way that serves them, as an entity that serves them, that protects them, that is interested in their well-being. Those are the kinds of things that we urgently need in the city of San Diego, and has not happened. And I would say quality of life, having an opportunity to breathe. I was diagnosed with asthma, Maria, because I lived in Logan Heights for a long, long time. And those are the kinds of things that we should not be tolerating. We should be ashamed of the fact that District 8 is the only residential area in the city of San Diego in which heavy industry is still allowed to set up shop next to homes. And that means that kids are going to school with heavy toxins, floating over their heads, or bringing this toxicity there. That's diminishing the quality of life of our youth. So I want to make sure that we improve the environmental conditions in our community. I want to make sure that folks have an affordable place to live in our community. And most importantly, I want to make sure that San Diegans know that the city of San Diego works for them, that this is a city that cares for them, that cares for working families. We need that, and we can't wait another 8 years until we have a voice in San Diego that really stands up for the rights of those who have been left behind for generations.
We have about 30 seconds left. What would you like to tell us?
What I would like to say, Maria, is that I am hopeful. I'm hopeful that our country will turn around. I'm hopeful that our city will continue to make progress. And I'm hopeful that we will have an opportunity in our lifetimes to ensure that the kinds of injustices that have marked our communities for so many generations will come to an end. And this is the reason why I'm running for office. I want to live behind a legacy to my son and to the future that we can do it. Y si se puede en este país.
Thank you so much for being our guest and for coming up here so early in the morning. We will have our next show will be about the American Museum at Liberty Station. Thank you so much for listening, and have a nice Thanksgiving.
A podcast or radio show on WS Radio is a great way to create content marketing. Turn prospects into customers into raving fans. Contact Wade at WSRadio.com or call 866-WS-RADIO.
Kenja Dixon was crowned the #1 sales executive through hard work, deep thinking, and the revelation of universal talk laws. He now wants to share these lessons with you. Universal talk laws are what you need to know and use in business and at home to have successful and effective conversations. Kenja Dixon shares his wisdom, action plans, and wealth. Each book comes with a chance to win $10,000. Find Universal Talk Laws at KenjaDixon.com. On the internet, your business's reputation can be unjustly destroyed in an instant. Don't wait for that to happen. Building and marketing your 5-star reputation can increase your business by as much as 19%. Take control of your reputation and have the 5-star reputation you deserve with Reputation Marketing Solutions by DSI Development. Become the go-to company by visiting 5starrepmarketing.com. The number 5starrepmarketing.com.
Hi, Scale listener. This is David Finkel, co-host with Jeff Hoffman of Scale Your Business. I wanted to let you know that our newest book, Scale, was just released and to encourage you to get your copy. The book will give you 7 proven principles to grow your business and get your life back. If you've ever wanted to grow your business, but held yourself back from fear that it would take over your life, then we urge you to get your copy of Scale today. It'll give you a proven roadmap for rapidly growing your business while also gaining more personal freedom. Scale will help you work less by getting your business to produce more. Scale is for every entrepreneur who ever wondered if they really own their business or if their business owns them. Get your copy online or at your local bookseller. For more information, visit us online at scaleyourbusinesstoolkit.com. That's scaleyourbusinesstoolkit.com.
Controversy and conversation to upset the status quo. A no-holds-barred exploration and obliteration of the limits of possibility. Join me, Steve Olsher, and my rambunctious crew on Reinvention Radio, where each week we scour the planet to bring you the world's foremost social, business, political, technology, and scientific disruptors who challenge the accepted and forge daring, cutting-edge paths. That's Reinvention Radio, where normal comes to die and mediocrity meets its final demise.
Hi, this is Rob Barnett, VinVillage.com, where wine lovers connect. Be sure to tune in weekly to Vin Village Radio for exclusive, in-depth interviews with the who's who in wine and food.